الحمد لله رب العالمين صلوات الله وسلامه على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. This is a discussion on the book of Sheikh Safar al-Hawali, inshallah, Islam and the Western Civilization. This book that was just written and it went widespread in Arabic actually. It made a big scandal, or many people started searching for it, many people started trying to read it, and many people gave their opinions about this book, and a lot of people criticized the book. Others said that it's not a real book, it's a fake book, that Sheikh Safar didn't write this book. And some of them said, well, actually this is not a scientific or a knowledgeable book. It's only a book that is for preaching or for reminding people or something like that. So a lot of people gave their opinions about this book. So some of my dear brothers asked me to give my opinion about this book and discuss about this book, like as I said, in Arabic, because actually I discussed about this book in Arabic with a Libyan channel called an Islamic Libyan channel called Tanasur. That is the voice of the Fatwa Council of Libya, which is by the headmaster of Sheikh Sadiq al-Gharyani, hafidhahullah. So what can we say about this book? Who is Sheikh Safar al-Hawali, and what is the importance of this book, and why did this book lead Sheikh Safar al-Hawali to jail and to prison? Although he is sick, he's paralyzed, and why did they put even his 4 children and his brother in the prison as well? Is this book so dangerous to lead its author to prison and lead all of his family to prison? Was that fair actually? Was it fair to put a scholar and all of his family in the prison because he wrote a book, and a huge book actually? It's not a small book. It's not a few papers or something like that. What is the idea of this book, and why did Sheikh Safar al-Hawali write this book these days, especially these days? Yes. So to answer all of these questions and to give a brief view about this situation or this matter, I would like to say that Sheikh Safar al-Hawali or Dr. Safar al-Hawali his name is Abu Abdurrahman Safar ibn Abdurrahman al-Hawali al-Ghamidi. He was born in Al-Bahr, which is a city in southern Saudi Arabia, close to Yemen. It's between Hijaz and Yemen. And the land that Safar al-Hawali comes from is historically part of Yemen actually. And his tribe is a very famous tribe, Ghamid, since the Prophet ﷺ's days, and it refers to a big tribe in all southern Arabia, which is called Al-Azd. Al-Azd are a very big tribe that are from southern Arabia until it goes to Yemen, to Oman, all of these places, there is this tribe called Al-Azd. And there were many companions of the Prophet ﷺ who were from Al-Azd. And Sheikh Safar al-Hawali later on studied or settled in Mecca, and he became a Meccan citizen, where he studied in the University of al-Qura, and he studied even in the Islamic University of Medina. His main professor is Muhammad Qutb, the brother of Sayyid Qutb, rahimahullah. And Muhammad Qutb, rahimahullah, when he escaped from Egypt after the massacre of Nasser with the Muslim Brotherhood, and when he tortured them and put them in jail and killed their leaders like Sayyid Qutb, rahimahullah, and others. So Muhammad Qutb escaped to Saudi Arabia, which was in those days under the leadership of King Faisal, rahimahullah. King Faisal had a very good policy in gathering scholars and Muslim thinkers to his country and giving them Saudi nationality and putting them in good posts in the universities and stuff like that, and even making them giving them the right to preach in the two holy masajid, Masjid Haram and Masjid Nabawi. And so he was actually like a father of all the Muslims in the world. He took that post and he worked on it. So in those days, many Muslims from Egypt, from the Maghreb, from Syria, from all places, came to Saudi Arabia and started writing and preaching and giving lectures and stuff like that. Muhammad Qutb, rahimahullah, started giving lectures in al-Qura University and in lots of places. He used to give speeches, and I participated in some of those speeches because I used to live there. Actually, I grew in Arabia. I grew in Arabia. I nearly was born there. I mean, and I even participated in some lectures of Sheikh Safar al-Hawali and other famous scholars there. So Sheikh Safar al-Hawali took his master and by Sheikh Muhammad Qutb, or Professor Muhammad Qutb, and the topic was secularism. He wrote a very important book about secularism, Al-Ilmaniyya. It's a huge book in a volume, and he showed what is secularism and why is it against Islam. Why is it against Islam? It's a very important book to read. Later on in his PhD, under the supervise of Professor Muhammad Qutb as well, he wrote on the topic of al-irja. What is al-irja? Al-irja is to say that faith is only belief without action. And that's against the Sunni creed, which insists that we have to believe and we have to pronounce and we have to act. That is the real Islamic creed in faith, in iman. Al-iman, qawlun wa amal. So he wrote the roots of this opinion, which says that action is not part of faith. And his PhD was in 2 volumes. And it's a very interesting book. It's a very interesting book that scholars praised, and they said that was a good job, a very good job. And later on, Sheikh started giving lectures, he started teaching in the universities until year 1410, which is 1990, where Saddam Hussein decided to attack Saudi Arabia, and he took Kuwait. He invaded Kuwait, and then he threatened Saudi Arabia. Okay, Saudi Arabia actually was so afraid, and they called the United States forces to protect them from Saddam Hussein. When they decided to do that, Sheikh Safar al-Hawali and other scholars were against this step. They said that this is totally against the Islamic creed. And he started giving the proofs and evidence about that. And he gave two important speeches. The first one was titled by فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ, escape to Allah. This is a verse of Quran. فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ, escape to Allah. That means we made a lot of mistakes. That's why Allah punished us by these guys. But the solution is not to keep on running away from Allah. The solution is to escape and run to Allah, not from Allah. The second speech, okay, these speeches were in masajid, and hundreds of people used to participate in these speeches. The second one was titled by the verse of the Quran, فَسَتَذْكُرُونَ مَا أَقُولُ لَكُمْ. You will remember what I'm telling you right now. And he spoke a lot, and he said that being an ally to the enemies of Islam is something that makes the Muslim apostatize from Islam. وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُمْ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. And the one that makes them as an ally, he will be part of them. And he spoke historically that the United States of America was preparing to invade those places of oil in Arabia. And he wrote a very interesting book, was called The Promise of Kissinger. Kissinger was an American minister of external affairs. And he wrote this book as a letter to his Sheikh Abdul bin Baz, rahimahullah. And he gave him evidence and a lot of historical proofs that this is not as you think. It's only story of protecting yourself from an enemy that is invading you and asking non-Muslims to be your allies against this enemy. No, the story is more complicated than that. The story is that this is a trick to invade Arabia. And we have to be aware about that. We have to be aware about that. This promise, Kissinger, the promise of Kissinger, has another name. It's called كشف الغمة عن علماء الأمة. كشف الغمة means when you take something, the veil from the eyes of somebody to see how the situation is. So he says taking the veil of, or opening the eyes of scholars to see the situation as it is. That was a very interesting letter, and it's published as well. You can search for it and read it if you like. I don't know if these books are published or translated to English, but all of them are published. Sheikh Safar has another interesting book called, it was originally a speech, but he later on made it as a book. It's called Al-Wa'd al-Haq wal-Wa'd al-Muftara. The true promise, or covenant, if we can say, and the false covenant, or the true promise and the false promise. What is the true promise and the false promise? He says that there's a battle in the world. And this battle is leading to a huge battle between everybody. Everybody's waiting for this battle. This battle is known as the Battle of Megiddo. Megiddo. And you can read it in the Bible, in the book of Revelation, in the last, which is the last book of the Bible, where it speaks about this huge battle. Megiddo is a mountain northern Palestine where Jews and Christians and Muslims believe that there is a big battle that is going to happen there. Christians, and especially the evangelists, all of them prepare for this battle. The Zionist Jews prepare for this battle as well, and they believe that their Messiah is going to come down and they're going to fight with them against the evil, according to them. And the Christians say that Jesus Christ is going to come down and they're going to fight with them against the evils. And we Muslims believe that Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam, is going to come down as in Damascus, and we are going to fight with him against the Antichrist. The Antichrist actually is going to be the leader of the Jews and all of these real evils. So the battle, we believe in that battle, and they believe in the battle. But our promise is the true promise, and their promise is the false promise. You can see the Westerns, you can think that they don't believe in these things and that these are superstitions. But actually, the leaders of the Westerns are real believers, and especially the evangelists and the Americans. The Americans are more religious than Europeans, but even the Europeans, although they are actually secularist people, and they don't believe in religions, most of them, they don't believe in religion, they don't believe in the Bible, they don't believe in anything like that, but even though they follow this strategy, because actually Americans are the leaders of the world anyway, so even the Europeans follow them, and the Jews actually, the Zionists, they have their promise as well. And we Muslims have our promise that we believe in. So this was a small book, but Sheikh Safar later on in this book decided to write a book that would be a farewell book. Sheikh Safar al-Hawali is nearly 70 years old. And he worked a lot actually he was one of the main scholars that are responsible for the Islamic Awake that appeared since 40 years ago. Okay, when I speak about the Islamic Awake, this is the second Islamic Awake, because there was an awake before it that started with Imam Hassan al-Banna rahimahullah in Egypt, and it spread in everywhere. But that awake actually, it was an awake, but it wasn't strong as the awake that appeared since 40 years ago. That awake was so strong that it appeared everywhere in the world, not only in Islamic world, in the world. And it spread that even non-Muslims started searching for Islam and following Islam. And that's why you find that even in the West, a lot of people search for Islam and they started converting Islam. Why? Because they are searching for the truth. So Muslims searched for the truth, so they woke up from their sleep, or they woke up from their dreams or whatever, and they were astray, and then they started thinking that the real way to come back and be a real nation and a real ummah is to follow the Prophet ﷺ. So
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
The Prophet ﷺ, follow Islam as it is in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Not follow only traditions, not follow only opinions and stuff like that. Nowadays, actually, the awake is collapsing or is going down. People are like apostatizing from the awake, not from whole religion, from the awake. But this might be considered as only being tired a little bit, but we will wake again, because the Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّ لِكُلِّ عَامِلٍ شِرَةٍ وَإِنَّ لِكُلِّ شِرَةٍ فَتْرَةٍ. Everyone who works, he has an active era that he works very hard and struggles in it. But every struggle later on has laziness in it, and it starts coming down again. فمن كانت فترته إلى السنة فقد أنجح ومن كانت فترته إلى البدعة فقد خاب وخسر. The one that settles a little bit but still follows the sunnah, he will succeed. But the one that goes astray and follows innovations, he will lose. He's one of the losers. Sheikh Safar went to prison, and he remained in prison about 7 years, until Sheikh Ibn Baz rahimahullah spoke to King Fahd and told him that you have to get these scholars out of prison. Sheikh Safar and Salman and others, Salman al-Uda and others. Then they came out of prison, but their strategy started changing. And even the whole situation changed. Actually, the whole situation changed. So they made some, especially Sheikh Salman, made some reform and changed his strategy and even some of his opinions and stuff like that. Sheikh Safar remained as he is, and wrote several books, and he had some work, and he carried on. Welcoming people and welcoming his visitors and speaking with these guys and others. He had a very wide relationship with everybody, even with non-Muslims. He's considered as a very intellectual person that knows the Western history and civilization very well. Very well. That is plus to his Islamic knowledge, his Islamic Sunni knowledge. So he is a scholar that was influenced a lot by Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, in his way that he speaks about philosophy and history and all kinds of ideologies and stuff like that, but by by judging it to the Quran and the Holy Sunnah. So later on, Sheikh Safar, when he saw what was happening nowadays in Arabia and the dramatical changes in the Saudi regime, and he saw that lots of scholars changed their strategies and changed their way and even changed their opinions and ideologies. Many of them turned away from what they used to say and how they used to preach. Many of them started loving this life, and they made a lot of business and money and stuff like that, which actually this changed their strategy, because what's the thing that makes the Muslim change? It's loving this life. When you love this life, it becomes very difficult to say the truth, especially if you are going to be, or you're going to pay for that. When you say the truth, you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it either by being imprisoned, either by being tortured, either by being killed, either a lot of things, you know. So there's a big. So Sheikh Safar feels that there is a very big responsibility on his. He bears a very heavy responsibility on his shoulders, and this responsibility is the responsibility of being a scholar. The scholars are the inheritors of, or the heirs of the prophets, peace be upon them. Al-ulama warathatul anbiya. And they are the successors of the prophets, peace be upon them, especially our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he used to speak about these things with his visitors. So he used to tell them that I feel that I want to write a book and put all of my knowledge in it. And that's what he did later on. Now this book, he says in the introduction that he wanted to finish it before Ramadan, last Ramadan, because he feels that it's time to say what he's going to say. Maybe he felt even that his life can't be more than that, and he has to write these things before he dies. So he worked on this book, which is about 7 volumes, 3,060 pages, with 3 appendixes in the end of it. What did he write in these 7 volumes? Islam and Western Civilization. Sheikh Safar al-Hawali wants to tell you, Muslims, to be proud of Islam, to be proud of your Islam. You Muslims have a very, very expensive treasure, which is this religion. And you have a very rich history. And you are the inheritors of this history. And this history was a very fertilized history that gave to all nations in the world, that gave them knowledge, that opened their minds, that opened their eyes, that awakened a lot of people in the whole world, and especially the Westerns, and it affected or it influenced the Western civilization. But so sorry to say that the Westerns never like to recognize the Islamic civilization. Only few of them recognize that and write about that. But the majority of them were always against Muslims and against Islam. Although Westerns, when they were pagans in the beginning of their history, and they opened their eyes by Christianity, which is the religion of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, and they had a lot of battles between them until the king Constantine decided to follow Christianity, and he forced all of the people who follow his Roman Empire to follow Christianity by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church, which was mixed between the real teachings of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, and a lot of pagans' doctrines, and with the innovation of Paul that twisted the real teachings of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. All of this made a false religion called Christianity, which is Catholicism, the Catholic Church, which believed in Trinity, which believed in that Jesus Christ sacrificed himself for the humanity and stuff like that, which actually is not true. And later on, when Islam came by our beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and these Christians had a lot of prophecies that told them to follow the Prophet ﷺ in their holy books, they rejected the message of our Prophet ﷺ. And their priests went to influencing them and putting in their minds that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is only a heretic person or a heretic priest that made a false religion from the Bible, that he was influenced. They claim that he was influenced by the Bible. The Quran spoke about that. And the Quran is only a mixture between the stories of the Bible and the Jewish and the Christian tradition. And then they went making a lot of lies. Lying on the Prophet ﷺ and twisting a lot of things in his life and telling the Europeans that this is what is, and telling the Europeans that Mahoma, they used to say Mahoma, not Muhammad ﷺ, Mahoma ﷺ, told Arabs that those nasty Arabs that don't know anything, that they have to go and kill people to force them to follow their religion. SubhanAllah, this idea of that Muslims are violent, it's not something new. It's not something from now. It's an old thing. You can find that in the old books. They keep on claiming that the Prophet ﷺ was a violent person that forced people to follow him, and that Islam spread by the sword. They keep on saying that. SubhanAllah. They keep on saying that Islam didn't spread because it's a logical religion. No, because it tortured people and forced them to follow it. And that's of course that is a big fat lie. Actually, they said that Mahoma kept on telling people that the Satan came down on earth and he put 3 eggs. He made 3 eggs. An egg was Jews, and an egg was Christians, and an egg was Mangians or whatever. 3 eggs. And all of those guys are sons of evil, son of the Satan. That's what Muslims, they say. They don't say Muslim. Muslims keep on telling people, and Mahoma is teaching his followers. And of course, this is a big lie. SubhanAllah, when did Christians get in touch to Muslims? The rabbis, and not the rabbis actually, the priests and the priests and the Pope and his cardinals and all these guys told the Christians that they have to go to attack these infidels. They call the Muslims infidels, and they don't even call them Muslims infidels. They call them pagans, and they claim that they worship a big a black stone in a black house, which is the Kaaba. So they claim that we Muslims worship the Kaaba, and instead of being and supporting Muslims, because we, both of us, believe in one God, and both of us believe in the prophets, peace be upon them, and both of us believe in all the promises of God in His holy books, and actually Muslims are against pagancy and all these types of doctrines. They go and support non-Muslims against Muslims, like the pagans, the Buddhists, all types of people that don't even have a book, and that Christians and Jews have to condemn them because they worship idols truly, actually. But no, as the Quran kept on telling us, that they go supporting those guys against the Muslim. The Pope told his followers and the priests and monks and stuff like that, they told them that these pagans invaded the Holy Land of Jerusalem and the land of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. So we have to go and release and purify that land from these pagans. And that was the Crusade Wars that appeared in the medieval ages, where they kept on attacking Muslims, and that remained about 400 centuries, 400 years, 4 centuries. And actually it didn't remain 400 years, it remained more than that, actually. And it kept on until nowadays.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
The British general that invaded Palestine, he said, now the Crusade battles have finished. Now the Crusade battles have finished. Subhanallah al-Azim. This is very strange to keep on thinking like that and attacking Muslims with this mentality. The strange thing that Westerns still inherit this hate to Muslims. And even when they were in touch with Muslims, and they changed a lot, this led them to make reform, which led to the reform of Christianity by Martin Luther and Calvin and all these guys. And this led to the enlightened ages, which is the 17th, 18th, 19th century, which Europeans discovered a lot of knowledge when they met Muslims, and they took a lot of books from Muslims, and they took their way in thinking and stuff like that. So actually Muslims went sleeping again, and the Europeans and the Westerns started their civilization. But the story is, which Sheikh Safar enlightens in his books, the story is this civilization, so sorry to say, it has several good things. We don't say that. We don't say that it doesn't have good things. No. We say that it has good things. But those good things were mixed with a lot of bad things. And with the big hate to Muslims. Remember, in the beginning of last century, the 20th century, where the Europeans invaded most of Islamic land. And they tortured Muslims, and they forced them to stop following their Islamic law. And they made their best to make them far from following Islam. They would never love Muslims and be pleased with them unless the Muslims follow their ideologies. And that's what happened in a lot of things. Sheikh Safar keeps on saying that. He says that they call for democracy and these things, but they agree to work with undemocratic leaders in our countries. and they are against. They call for human rights, but they practice all things that are against human rights against Muslims, and they would agree to let some Arabic or backward regimes to torture people and to do whatever they can do, and they would be pleased to do that. And that is actually hypocrisy, actually, to call for something and then be pleased with somebody that is doing against what you're saying because you want that, because you consider that those are your enemies. Actually, that is hypocrisy. This is what Sheikh Safar is speaking about. He speaks about this Western civilization as a civilization that is going to collapse, civilization that is running away from God, civilization that makes people change their fitrah, their nature, civilization that calls for homosexuality, civilization that calls for a lot of things that are against humanity, civilization that sees how come there are a lot of unlegitimate children, but they don't search for why do we have a lot of unlegitimate children in our nations. Why do we have that? A civilization that doesn't follow any holy book, a civilization that inherits hate from its priests and its religious leaders, but even when they decided to stop following religion and to become secular, they kept on following those hates, and they kept on following the false ideologies that are derived from the wrong teachings of the corrupted Bible, that was corrupted by the rabbis and the priests and the doctors of law. This is the idea of the book. And after that he says, oh, you Muslim, you have to be proud of yourself, proud of your religion, proud of your history, proud of the teachings of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have to go and search for it again, and don't pay attention to this civilization that is going to collapse, actually, because this civilization that destroyed the family, destroyed morals and meanings, destroyed beautiful teachings, destroyed the teachings of the prophets, civilization that escapes from God Almighty. It's a civilization that would lead its nations to destruction. And we can see how nowadays people are decreasing in the West, and that leads them to call others to come to their lands, because they don't have any more citizens that can, or young men that can work. So they have to ask for others to come to their nations, and that is changing the whole demography in Europe, especially, and even all the West. Civilization that nowadays is calling people, is letting people follow their desires and changing the morals and meanings, and it doesn't have any background to go back to, because they decided to cut the relationship with religion, to cut the relationship with the heavens. And they have actually two ways. They don't have any other way. Either they go to destruction, or they follow the truth, which is Islam. And the Muslims in the West are in a place that they have to decide as well. They either follow Islam as it was taught by our beloved Prophet ﷺ, so they raise up and they rule the world, or else they go down and they get lost. Do the West fight against Islam because it's a religion? Or do they fight against Islam because material meanings, or because they think that Muslims are against their interest or stuff like that? There isn't there is a big connection between these two things. Why did the pagans of Mecca attack our beloved Prophet ﷺ? Is it because he told them to worship only one God? Or was it because of something else? Actually, they were people, monotheist people before the Prophet ﷺ. Like Waraq ibn Nawfal, like Zayd ibn Zayd, the father of Sa'id ibn Zayd, and like who was uncle of Umar ibn Khattab, like others. Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl, his name is Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl, like others. Why didn't they fight against them or torture them, or even? Because those guys, firstly, didn't have a group of people following them. Secondly, they didn't change the whole regime or the whole way of life, and actually they didn't affect the interest of the leaders of Mecca and the leaders of those days. So worship one God or worship idols, that doesn't mean anything to them. The Prophet ﷺ, in his beginning 3 years, they thought he was one of those guys, so they didn't pay attention to him. Actually, 3 years in the beginning, he's asking people to worship only one God. Okay, that's not a big deal. And most of his followers actually were just these servants and slaves and stuff like that. But later on, after these 3 years, when the Prophet ﷺ called all of the people of Mecca to follow him and worship only one God, and stop worshiping all of those idols, and those idols are false, and all of the leaders of Mecca that call people to follow those idols are invaders, and their parents who used to do that were astray. They went crazy. They said, okay, now you're calling us astray people, and you're saying that so you're insulting our fathers, our parents, and you're insulting us and insulting our ancestors, and they went crazy. And then they saw people following him. They saw many of their youth following him. Okay, this means that the situation is serious, and that would lead to stop a lot of things that get us that change our leadership in Mecca. And this would make all Arabs stop following us, and that would lead that our that would lead to a lot of how am I going to say, a lot of it will stop our business. It'll stop a lot of things that we make from all of this whole regime and whole civilization. It's the same thing. The West believes that there is no competitor that would compete with their civilization except the Islamic civilization. Why? Because Islamic civilization teaches its followers that Islam ya'lu wa la yu'la. Muslim is not allowed to be under anybody. He is supposed to be always the best and superior. And our Islamic law has to be superior of all other laws, because the Quran says that. And we have to practice our religion as it is. And we preach for that. And that's why the West started now abusing Muslims in a lot of places, forcing a lot of sisters to take off their hijab, they're not allowed to wear their niqab, Switzerland didn't allow Muslims to build the minarets for their masajid. Other places, the same thing, forced Muslims to be part of their civilization and doctrine and agree to be part of their civilization. Okay, where is democracy? Where is the other opinion? Where is accepting the other? Where is the freedom? Where are these things? These meanings don't agree and don't exist anymore. So the West is destroying his civilization that it's like when you make an idol from dates, and when you become hungry, you go eating the idol. Actually, you worship it, and then when you become hungry, you go eating it. That's what the West did. The West built a big building from dates and chocolate and sweets. So everybody said, "Oh my God! Oh, that's fantastic! Freedom! Oh yeah, democracy! You have the right to say whatever you want. You go to the judges. You take your right. You do all these things." But when things come to the limits, all of these things change. And this is what Sheikh is saying. Now, the other thing that I'll finish my speech about, that Sheikh Safar, nowadays in Saudi Arabia, the new regime is making the whole the Saudi regime as a secular regime. Secular in law, secular in the life, and being open, not open to follow, not to be liberal, only in evil meanings. Liberal, that means women can do whatever they want, youth can wear whatever they want. They don't follow Islam. They don't. But on the other side, all scholars that are against this way, they have to go to jail. All scholars that don't praise the new leaders, they have to go to jail, not because they spoke, because they didn't speak. If you don't speak, you go to jail. Not because if you spoke. So everybody was afraid because thousands of scholars and preachers and young men and stuff like that were put in jail. Don't forget that there are scholars since years are in jail, like Sheikh Tarifi, Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid, and others. And there is no laws there. There is no rights. Nothing at all. You just go to jail. You don't have even a lawyer to speak about you. You don't have anybody to speak about. Nothing. I mean, everything. I mean, there are other countries, even in the West, you find people that speak, organizations, stuff, human rights groups that speak, that say a lot of things. But Saudi Arabia doesn't have anything like that. So that led to a very complicated situation that made a lot of Muslims there worry about the future. What is going to happen in the future? So Sheikh Safar, in his book, was very clear that the Saudi regime, if it cuts with religion, it doesn't have any legitimate. Because what makes the Saudi regime a legitimate regime that all Muslims recognize it and respect it? It's Islam. They said that they follow the Wahhabi movements, which Sheikh Muhammad Abdul Wahhab made an agreement with Muhammad ibn Saud, and this led to create the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And this led to protect the teachings of Muhammad ibn Wahhab and his students, and implement it in the life there. On the other side, Muhammad ibn Wahhab and his students and followers respect the leaders as protectors of religion. But when this situation changed, what would make people recognize the regime and protect it and see it as a legitimate regime? This is the idea. The second idea is that he was so clear to say that these changes are totally against the Quran and the Sunnah, and we don't go back to any opinion or idea or doctrine. We go to the Quran and the Sunnah. That is the way to understand everything and to measure anything. And in the end of the book, he wrote 3 appendixes. The first appendix was letter to scholars. You scholars have to speak. You have a responsibility near God Almighty. It's not, you can't say that I have the right to keep silent. No, you have to say the truth. And it's a covenant between scholars and God made it with them to say the truth, or else he will put his wrath on them. The second one is for the preachers. They have to say the truth because preachers are part of the scholarship. They're part of the scholars actually. And they have responsibility to say the truth as well. And like what Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal said, if ignorant people speak and scholars keep on silent, when are people going to know the truth? That's why I said that Sheikh Safar nowadays, he is like Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal in his days. Ahmad ibn Hanbal spoke when everybody was afraid. So that's why he became very high in the eyes of all Muslims. Muslims respect Ahmad ibn Hanbal not because they are Hanbalis. All of Muslims respect Ahmad ibn Hanbal because he said the truth and he was tortured for the truth. The same thing happened with other Imams, like Imam Malik, like Imam Shafi'i, like Imam Abu Hanifa, like in the days of Sheikh Hassan al-Kettani and others. They said the truth and they paid for it. They paid for it. Prison, they paid for it. Kicked out of their, banned from their countries, they paid for it. Tortured, they paid for it, even killed. They were killed. Many scholars were killed for the truth. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said that the leader of the martyrs is Hamza, uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, and one scholar that said the truth to a bad leader, so he killed him. He didn't accept that truth from him and he killed him. The last letter was to the family of Al-Saud. And he said to them, actually, let me just tell you, Sheikh Safar in his book is very calm. He doesn't insult anybody. He doesn't say he doesn't use any bad words at all. He speaks very calm. But he speaks with a very high language, and he respects Islam, respects the Prophet ﷺ, respects the Quran, respects the Sunnah, and he speaks as somebody confident in Islam. Says that this is the truth, everybody has to follow the truth. And that we don't have to be humiliated and down. No, we have to be always high and be proud of our religion. I think this is actually an idea about the book, and there's a lot to say about that. I just wanted to give you a brief idea about the Sheikh and his book, and maybe we can say more than that later on, inshallah, but anybody of you who can read the book, it'll be very interesting for him to read, and he will benefit a lot. I'm reading the book right now, and I'm feeling so interested in reading that book. May Allah release Sheikh Safar and his children and all of the scholars that are in prison in everywhere in the world, and all the innocent innocent people that are in prison. Actually, I don't speak only about scholars. I would speak about all innocent people that struggle for Islam and they are in prison. And this is the end. Alhamdulillah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, jazakumullah khairan. Thank you very much. Being patient with me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, the book is available in the internet, but it's in Arabic. It's not translated to English. We will share the book, inshallah, with you, brothers and sisters. And inshallah, you can benefit from it. Inshallah, we'll share that with you guys. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.